thank you, Nick, for that introduction.
Sure.
I love teaching this class every year. It's one of my favorite things. So I'm just going to teach you basically about how to teach with insects, but we're going to go over some principles that can be applied to teaching with pretty much any animal and in any circumstance. So a little bit about me. Who is this lady up here telling us all about these weird bugs? I am a double dog, so I just had the realization 10 years ago I started my freshman year at UGA, which was pretty humbling. But I did an undergrad in the College of Ag and Environmental Sciences. My background is entomology. And I wanted to go to vet school. That's the whole reason I came here. But life had other plans. So I ended up coming in with a lot of extra credit, and I took a medical entomology class with Dr. Champagne, and realized I kind of like this. So I took another bug class and another bug class, and then before I knew it, I was a semester away, 2 classes away from making it a major. So I ended up doing that and pursued my master's in the Department of Entomology. And my thesis work was on mosquitoes, specifically Aedes aegypti. I don't know if y'all have heard of that one, but it's the yellow fever mosquito. So I did a big, long thesis with a lot of words that I don't really remember now, because going through graduate school, I realized that lab stuff wasn't really my thing either. So as you go through college, I know this seems kind of cheesy, but you're going to grow and you're going to change so much, and you're going to end up somewhere that you probably never even thought. And it's going to be for the best. So just let this be a lesson to you. Someone who thought they were going to be a vet from 4 years old is now teaching about bugs. So, and is perfectly happy doing it. So Nick mentioned that I am a county extension agent or extension professional, and that means a bunch of different things. We are essentially University of Georgia faculty that are mobilized at the county level to give educational programming to county communities. So every county has an extension office. How many of y'all are familiar with extension? Any 4-H'ers? Yeah! Woo! Okay, so that is one of our pillars. So we have 4-H agents. And then we have ag agents like me who go out and meet with farmers, do educational programming. I do a lot of work with pollinators, community gardens, what we call guerrilla farmers, where they just kind of farm wherever they can, whenever they can, and farming on blighted properties, things like that, because I'm in Fulton County, so it's big city Atlanta, and there's a lot more ag going on there than you would think. So I do a lot of that. This is where I was before, up in Blairsville and Hiawassee. We had a lot of vineyards, so I consulted with a lot of vineyard owners. And then we have family and consumer sciences, and that is basically health, nutrition, what used to be called home ec. In addition to that, we also do a lot of financial assistance as far as estate planning, helping people understand how to make wills, things like that. So the list of what we don't do is a lot shorter than the list of what we do. But this is all us. This is our mobile market. We take it into food deserts and give people in need fresh local foods. So that's just kind of another initiative that we do. We wear a lot of hats and do a lot of cross-programming. So one of the things, obviously, that I'm going to talk to you about today is insects, because that's my background. That's what I'm used to teaching about. So I'm going to teach you how to teach about insects. And the best thing to do is start from the beginning. What are insects? Okay? So here we have a taxonomic tree of where insects fit in Kingdom Animalia, because insects are animals. And then you go a little further down, they are arthropods. Are y'all familiar with the King Philip came over? Yeah, that's what we're doing. So we have kingdom and we have phylum, and we also have subphyla and subfamilies and everything like that that they don't teach you with that little acronym. But we have trilobites here. They were kind of like a mix between centipedes and horseshoe crabs. They're real funky looking. They are extinct. But over here we have crustacea, we have chelicerates, so your spiders, and scorpions. I've had too much coffee today, I can't focus. And horseshoe crabs, things like that. These are all cousins to insects, which we see right here. So under Uniramia you have centipedes, millipedes, which are not insects, and then you have your insects right here. Now, of course, there's a lot more orders there, but we're mainly focusing on a couple today because we kind of have to pare it down. So a little bit about where they fit into our world right now. This is a map of pretty much all the animal biomass on the planet. So insects have possibly 30 million different species. They are hands down the most diverse animal that we have on the planet. Ant colonies have about 630,000 individuals, and termites can have over 3 million. That's more than the population of Fulton County, which is 75 miles long and has Atlanta and so many other cities in it. So your termite nests are going to have populations of over major metropolitan areas in that one termite hub. And you can see here in this little graph, you can see mammals. This is where we are, that cute little orange sliver, right? We're pretty humbled next to other invertebrates, even fishes and mollusks and spiders and scorpions. Insects take up 75% of the species on Earth. And those are the described species. So this is 30 million. That's based on what they haven't described, what they think is present, undiscovered in the rainforests and things like that. So today we're going to talk about the big four. It's usually technically the big five, but we're just sticking to four right now. We have Lepidoptera. That's our butterflies and moths, really charismatic. Everybody loves the butterflies and moths that flit around that you see in your garden. We have Hymenoptera, which are the wasps. Diptera, which are the flies. And Coleoptera, which are the beetles. So those are going to be the major four that you're going to come in contact with, and if you have people asking you questions, they're probably going to be about those four orders. So again, this is just a further breakdown of the percentage of described species, and again with statistics, depending on the year you get them, depending on your source, they're going to differ a little bit, but you can still see we've got about 75% carved out, but look at this 25% chunk. That's just beetles alone. So beetles, order Coleoptera, make up 25% of described species on this planet. Just beetles alone. So that's why insects, I find them so impressive. But how do we actually know if it is an insect? So I've told you where they're related, why they're important. How do we actually know what it is, right? Very common question. All insects have 6 legs without exception. If you see an insect with 5 or 4 legs, it had 6 legs at one time. It's just been through a lot. You will not see insects with 8 legs or 10 legs. The body plan will always have a head, thorax, and abdomen. Sometimes it's not going to be as well defined as we see in this wasp, in this yellow jacket. Sometimes with like bed bugs and roaches, it's a little bit harder to see. You can see their head and everything else kind of blends together. But as you become more familiar with insects, it's a little bit easier to tell. I don't expect you to be able to do that by the end of this class. If you can just hold a bug by the end of this class, I'll be happy. And they also all have exoskeletons. So instead of having a nice, hard, calcified structure inside, they have something made of what we call chitin on the outside. It's similar to your nails and your hair. And fun fact, mushrooms also are made of chitin. So this provides a really, really hard structure on the outside. It's also the reason you can drop a bug from the equivalent of 1,000 stories high, and they're totally fine. And also they only have 1 pair of antennae. So you'll see crustaceans actually have 2. But they always, always, always have at least 1 pair, or only 1 pair of antennae. So some other arthropods that you may come into contact with are scorpions and spiders, and both of these are arachnids in the order Chelicerae. Okay, so we call them that because they have chelicerae, and these are their fangs, essentially. So this is what they use to inject the venom and immobilize their prey. A lot of people are very scared of tarantulas and of scorpions, and scorpions will also have venom in their spur on their back, and the telson. But basically, when you handle these guys, they know that they're not going to be able to eat you. They know exactly how big you are. And their venom is so incredibly, energetically expensive to produce, they're not going to waste it on you for the most part unless they think you're going to kill them. So they'll oftentimes just try to get away, or sometimes, like with scorpions, just pinch you to get out of it. The odds of them biting you are very, very slim. They also have pedipalps that are pretty enlarged. These are additional mouth parts, but they're arms. So imagine having extra little fingers coming out of your mouth to help you eat. That's what they have, so they can manipulate their food, because they don't have fingers on their hands, obviously. And they also always have 8 legs. It's hard to see in this picture, but there are 8 legs. And also these, I don't know if y'all noticed where the arrows were pointing, these are the pedipalps. So the scorpion's pincers, that's not arms. That's actually part of their mouth. That's like an extension of their jawbone that comes out and snaps and grabs things. So that's always pretty fun when people realize that. So the biggest question I get is, why do we care about insects? Why do we need to teach about insects? They're gross, they're annoying, you have to swat at them when you have a cookout. What is their purpose? Well, they're obviously really ecologically important. Okay, for multiple reasons, but a couple are we use them for biomonitoring. Who has heard what biomonitoring is? Okay, so have you ever seen people sampling in streams, and then you determine what kind of species are present in that stream? That's what biomonitoring is. So you have some species that are very sensitive to toxins, and you have some species that are not sensitive to toxins. A lot of those species in that range are insects, so caddisflies, stoneflies, different types of beetle larvae, things like that. All sorts of insects actually live in streams as immatures. They also serve as very important food sources. Naturally, we're all familiar with the food chain. You get rid of one, it has consequences down the line. They also have extreme agricultural relevance. So they can be crop pests. We like to joke that most of the entomologists in the entomology department, our #1 job is to kill the bugs. Obviously not all of them, but you get an infestation in a cornfield or a soybean field, that's someone's livelihood. So it's really important to understand these insects, their physiology, where they fit in their family structure, to see what killing them could have, what effect killing them could have on other things, and just basically understand them so you know thy enemy, if you will, so you know how to deal with them. And also for pollination, there's a lot of buzz, no pun intended, in the news about bees, right? A lot of people are worried about the honeybees. Not so many people are worried about our native bees, which is what we should be a little bit more worried about. But both of these are very, very important pollinators. And there's also a lot of advantages for humans. We can use them for pest control. So how many of y'all have heard of parasitoid wasps? Some of you guys, awesome! That's the first time I've gotten some nods about that. Very cool. So we have some wasps that will actually prey on other insects. So we have the little aphids that ladybird beetles like to eat, but they're nice and soft and gooey, so you'll get a tiny, tiny little female wasp that will come up to that aphid and stick her, what we call ovipositor, what she uses to deposit her eggs, into that aphid, lay her egg, and her larvae will feed on that aphid from the inside out. And they can multiply exponentially, so they can combat these pest problems. So for every species of wasp, there is a specific host species, so your off-target effects are pretty minimal, which is great. And then once you lose that pest, you lose the wasp, so there's no lasting ecological effects for the most part. We can use them as model organisms, which is actually what I did in grad school. I used my mosquitoes as model organisms, and some people also use Drosophila, so those little fruit flies. They're important model organisms for DNA, genome mapping, things like that, and a lot of testing of pharmaceuticals, and also entomophagy. Who can tell me what entomophagy is? It's eating insects. Yeah, right. Ew, that's the predominant noise I usually get. Now this isn't necessarily putting a tobacco hornworm on a stick and roasting it over a fire like a hot dog. That's not what Basically, there's this new push to have crickets and mealworms ground up and used essentially as protein powder or protein flour. And in areas that you don't have a lot of usable farmland for cows, you don't really have pasture land, you don't have chicken houses for really underserved nations, this is a really good protein option. You know, they make granola bars with it, they make cookies with it, all sorts of stuff. And when you look at the trade-offs between, you know, cricket and mealworms versus the rest of the meat industry, you know, it's just overall more efficient. They produce less methane. They take less food, obviously, because they're crickets and mealworms. So this is just the argument for this. It's not necessarily pushing out the other industries. It's just when we need mass amounts of protein, the beef industry and the chicken industry, things like that, they can't keep up with what globally is needed. So this is, you might hear some buzz about this. There was a conference about it in Athens a couple weeks ago, so I just find it pretty interesting. I'm not going to go around eating crickets yet, but just something you might hear about. So I've taught you the whys. Now I'm going to teach you the hows, okay? So there are three main things I want you to keep in mind, and we're going to go through each one. Always cater to your audience, okay? Today I am talking to college students. I can talk to you at a much different level than I can fifth graders. And I also need to talk to you differently than I would senior citizens, okay? You have different things that are important to you. You have different backgrounds. You're in a different spot in your life. So I need to take all of that into account. I don't really give this talk to my seniors who just want to learn about what flowers they can preserve and how to arrange them. We have to know so many different things, so many different topics, and cater to so many different audiences. You really have to take into account, are you doing an outreach at a school? And if it is a school, is it elementary, middle, high school? Is it going to be a blended outreach? I've had to do those. I've had to go from 4th grade to 12th grade in one day with the same resources. And that is a type of boot camp that will really test you. Are you just doing an exhibit? Are you kind of doing a passive outreach where you're setting up a table and then people are just walking by and taking a look? Are you supposed to grab them and engage them? Things like that. Are you doing a pedagogical event? So are you teaching adults something new? Are you supposed to be engaging adults in something that they don't know about? Or are you engaging stakeholders? So this is going to be something important that pretty much each of you is going to have to deal with at some point. You're going to be on a grant, you're going to meet a big boss or something, and they're going to watch you teach. They're going to watch you perform your job. You're going to be supervised. You need to impress them and show them that their money is going to a good source. Okay? No pressure, but you'll probably have to do it. So this is me and actually the Rockdale County Extension agent. We did a banquet at the Botanical Gardens. These are some of the kids I used to teach in Blairsville. And every year we would also do a bee promotion event, Oktoberfest, which I think still happens every October. So keep an eye out for it. The entomology department does it. And that's at Terrapin. We bring out our demonstration beehive, and we talk to a bunch of drunk adults about bees. And it's one of the most fun events I've ever been to because a 5-year-old and a drunk 22-year-old are about the same as far as what they like to talk about. So number 2, and Ranger Nick talked about this, always stay within your comfort zone, okay? That doesn't mean never challenge your comfort zone, but while you're doing an event is not the time to push yourself, okay? So basically, people will notice if you're uncomfortable. If you're trying to get people to know about something, if you're trying to get people to respect insects and to hold a cockroach, and you yourself are like, it's fun, I promise. They're not going to want to hold it, and you're not going to challenge their perspective at all, okay? So just stick to what you're comfortable with, and if you're not comfortable holding it, that's fine. That's why we have cages. You can hold it up like this. It's perfectly fine.
I'm not.
But, you know, maybe in your off time, hold it. Get used to it, how it moves, the sounds it makes. So you can explain it to people, too. So you seem knowledgeable, and that'll help with your own comfort level. And the arthropods, or really any insect or animal that you are dealing with, will notice. That's not to say like they smell your fear. Cockroach isn't going to smell your fear, but your little micro movements are going to be a lot jerkier. You're going to maybe breathe a little bit more heavily. You're just going to be more nervous, and that's going to really freak them out. They're going to think that they're not on a stable surface. They're going to think that they're not safe, that they're not secure, and that's going to put them on the defensive. Okay, so that's true for any animal, and especially animals at a higher level than insects. So just keep that in mind. So the third really important thing, always know your organism. Okay, know what you're teaching about. So what I have here are the next couple of slides are just an example of some of the insects we have at the insect zoo that we can take out. I'm going to talk about pretty much everything we have here except one, and this is a lesson in being flexible because I didn't know I was going to get that beetle from the zoo rental. So we're going to just talk about that a little bit at the end. But this is Madagascar hissing cockroaches. How many of you guys have seen these? Really common classroom pet. They're really easy to keep in colony. They breed like rabbits, essentially. So you can get plenty of them. I do have a link here to their hissing noise, but the internet is not working, and I actually have some, so we're not going to worry about that. They're very easy to keep in colony. They eat dog food. They live in egg crates. They're really easy. They're just happy. They do give live birth, which is very unusual for insects. They are what we call detritivores. So their role in the ecosystem in Madagascar is to break down garbage, just like roaches do here, except they usually do it in the jungle. So they break down the dead bodies, the dead insects, the rotten wood, things like that. And they also make a hissing noise. You'll see on their bodies, right? Remember how I told you sometimes it's hard to see the head, thorax, and the abdomen? But you see how the head's right here, and then you have these three dark plates, and then you have all of these lighter plates? That's the differentiation here. So that's the kind of things that you got to look for. It's also easier to tell as they move what bends and what doesn't. So here on their first segment of their abdomen, they have what we call spiracles. That's what they breathe through. And you'll see when you pick them up and you startle them, they expel air out of that, and it makes a sound. So if you're a bird and you put that in your mouth and then it goes, what are you going to do? You're going to drop it out. You're going to spit it right back out. I would. So we also have leaf insects. Yes?
What was the bottom picture of the last slide?
Ah, good question. I missed that because I was actually standing in front of it, so I didn't notice. This is what they look like after they molt. So I've gotten a lot of calls from teachers like, oh, we have albino cockroaches. And then I go, you know, they try to show me 5 hours later, he's gone. This is what it looks like after they molt, because insects will molt as they get older. They shed their skin because they have that exoskeleton. So it'd be kind of like wearing clothes from when you were 9 years old. You know, that doesn't work anymore. You got to upsize. So what they'll do is right after they shed, the proteins in their exoskeleton have not hardened yet. As they harden, they reflect light differently, and then eventually they'll look like this. So there's no such thing as an albino insect. They just look a little pale when they first molt. Yes?
Do they eat their molt once they shed it?
The cockroaches don't really. A lot of them will, like centipedes will. But I don't think the cockroaches really do because there's a lot of exoskeletons in their cage right now. But I've never seen it. They might if they're hungry. But that's a good point. A lot of insects will do it. And reptiles will do it too.
Oh, yeah.
We have a gecko that likes to do that, and frogs will do it because it's very nutritious. It's a lot of protein for them to eat. So for leaf insects, these guys are native to Malaysia, and naturally they have excellent camouflage. They also have a really, really interesting walk that you'll see when I pull them out. These guys are very slow. They're a great entry-level insect. So most people have the Madagascar hissing cockroaches, but their little toes, the little hooks on their toes, can grab you and kind of scare you because it feels like they're biting you. If you don't know what it is, because they just hook into your skin. They don't actually hurt you. That sounds a lot scarier than it is. But these guys, you don't get that feeling. They just crawl and they just kind of sway because even though they look like a leaf, if all the other leaves are swaying and they're not swaying, well, they're in trouble there too. Now these guys, one of my favorite things is how adorably dumb they are, because, maybe I shouldn't say that, maybe just convincing, because in those cages you will actually see, I haven't checked this one out, but some of them actually have little notches taken out of their wings and their sides because they think each other are leaves, and they eat leaves. Eventually they realize it, and they stop eating it. But, again, protein, right?
Cut it out, cut it out.
You guys are cool. We don't have any of these here today, but we do have these in the zoo. They are these Peruvian stick insects. I like these because they're red and black naturally. They're very cool. How many of y'all have seen walking sticks in your backyard, things like that? They're related to these. So they're a little bit fatter than what we're used to. They're not quite as stick-like, and they kind of stick out, honestly. But they have something called, the word just escaped me, but it's essentially an alarm coloring. So what they'll do, it's a startle coloration. So they have these wing pads that will be kept against their body, but when a bird or something goes up to it, it flares them out. So you see this bright red. And so they look like a critter with bright red eyes. And it scares them. And they go away. But these wing pads are what we call vestigial. They are not useful in the least, except for scaring away predators. They also have this habit where they curl their abdomen. We don't really know why. Some people think it's to imitate scorpions. Pretty much anything else that curls its abdomen is pretty scary and can hurt you. It could just be the way it is for balance. You know, we're not really sure why it does it. But these guys are only found in the wild in a 32-acre sliver in Peru. So you're not going to see these anywhere. And honestly, if they get loose from our zoo, they're not going anywhere either. Because that first winter, they're going to be knocked back. So we also have desert millipedes. These are another great entry level arthropod. Obviously, they're not insects. They got a little too many legs. But they look creepy. They really do, but they're slow. They're easy to pick up. They're easy to put down. They're mainly found in western U.S. and Mexico. They are also detritivores, so they feed on dead plant material. They need really, really moist environment, so they're going to burrow into the soil. And they're also going to curl into a ball, or if you press on them, if you push them, or they think like they've gone into a mouth and they're being eaten, they're going to secrete a noxious liquid. So it's going to taste bad, it's going to smell bad. Some millipedes actually even produce, I think it's cyanide. It's either cyanide, yeah, it is cyanide, not arsenic. But that's basically their defense mechanism, so the animal will spit it back out. But they won't, ours are really used to being handled, so they won't do that. I do not have any tarantulas today, but this is a prime example of stay within your comfort zone, because if we did have a tarantula, I would not take it out, because they kind of freak me out. So we have several different types of tarantulas, but my favorite is the Chilean rosehair. You can see it's called that because her cephalothorax, which is a combination of a head and a thorax, is pinkish. It's a rosy tint. They are obviously found in Chile and other areas of South America at higher elevations. They are nocturnal. They make burrows, and they put their webs around the burrows to keep the soil in place. And instead of biting, remember how I said how costly venom is to produce? They shed their hairs. So if any of y'all have touched like a prickly pear cactus or something, that's basically what it feels like. She will pump her stomach and shed her hairs onto whatever is irritating her. So she gets to irritate it, and it'll drop her. Her venom is no worse than a bee sting, but if you flip her over, you'll see that her fangs are the size of number 2 pencils. So it's not the venom that gets you, it's the fangs. But they're really cool. I don't have one today, I'm sorry. But yeah, the shedding hairs thing really freaks me out because I've never had it happen to me. I don't want it to happen to me. So I usually don't really pick them up or let anybody else pick them up. So why do I actually do this? You know, this is where you need to figure out your philosophy of why you want to teach with what you're teaching. Okay, so why I do this personally, it goes beyond insects are important. You know, of course, everybody needs to know about insects. But I like to challenge perspectives, okay? I like whoever said, ew, when you came into the classroom and saw what we were doing, I want you to be like, ooh, by the end of it, okay? Or at least be open to accepting different things about insects and how important they are. You might not get to hold it, but just accept, okay, I respect you in your space. You stay in your space, you're doing a good thing, that's fine. It's also my way of connecting with the community. My job is to connect with the community, but even if I didn't get to do that as my job, I would still choose to do this, because teaching with insects is a really great way to connect with my community because I'm good at it and because I like it. And there's nothing wrong with saying that you're good at something or sticking to what you're good at. That is your niche. Everything on this planet has a niche. And if you find it, stay there. Yeah, sure, challenge your comfort zone. But if that's where you're effective, figure out the best way that you can give back, that you can serve your community, and maximize your own effectiveness, if that makes sense. And I also like to use the insects to instill confidence and curiosity. I've brought them to a lot of after-school programs with a lot of kids. Their parents work 2 or 3 jobs, so they're there at the school for like 12 hours a day. And a lot of times, they finally work up the courage to hold the cockroach. And what do? They take a picture so they can show it to their parents. They did something cool in school. They challenged their perceptions. They held something that their parents are scared of and they didn't get hurt. Things like that. And just making them curious about things. I'm going to sound like such an old lady right now, but when I see a 9-year-old, your nose up to the phone, you're missing so many things around you. And that's why we're losing curiosity. We need to disengage them from that and engage them with the actual world around them. Sure, they can, Instagram or Snapchat later, whatever, that's fine. But they need to be able to break away and understand and learn how to learn. And that's what our jobs as educators are. So that went pretty quick because I really want you guys to get hands-on with these insects. But right now, I want to just take any additional questions and also point you guys to my blog and my Instagram because I'm not in rural Georgia anymore, so I really had to get up with social media. And a lot of us metro agents have to do a lot of these flexible things, to reach our audiences. We're not just talking to garden clubs anymore. We're engaging hip young people. So I do have an extension blog. I do about 2 posts a week. And then I do have an Instagram that I have not been good about using, but I'm trying, I promise. Lots of bugs on there. So with that, I will take any questions that you guys have. You asked a couple during the talk, but yeah. Y'all just want to hold the bugs, that's fine. I get it. So let me explain a little bit about what we've got going on here, okay? So we've got 3 preserved insect boxes. Most of the insects in here are going to be native. So I caught all of these in Georgia. And these are a borrowed box that I haven't actually gone through yet. And then we've got 3 live specimens, and I might bring out the other one. If anybody can find the specimen in the other container, I'll buy you coffee. Because I can't find it. Okay. But up first, we've got our leaf insect. So what I want to do right now is I'm going to call Ranger Nick up here, since this is my entry level. This is his speed, right? So we've got Ranger Nick. He's real nervous about insects. You've seen him. He's kind of like been skirting around the table. Do I want to look? I kind of want to look. They look kind of cool, but oh, they've got 6 legs. Like, oh, I don't know. So what you're going to do when he finally comes up to the table, hey, how are you doing? This is, I'm with UGA Extension. We've got the bugs out today. Do you want to hold him? And then, you gauge his response. Like, do you want to hold him?
Sure.
Okay. Well, this is where you bring him in. Okay, well, this guy, he can't jump, he can't bite, he can't sting, he can't fly, he goes real slow. He just likes to hang out on your hand. So you think you might want to hold him?
He's not going to attack me?
He's not going to, he cannot attack you.
Okay.
He cannot. So then,
walk from your hand to my hand?
He's going to walk from my hand to your hand. Exactly. And so the way you transfer this is you hold their hand, because there's going to be a lot of times when they're going to whip it back.
Sure. Yeah.
Don't let them do that. Just grab them. But obviously let them go. But don't. Can you imagine doing that to a 5-year-old? No. So basically, just make sure you have a good grip on your hand so you can tell if they're going to try to pull away. And then you put the insect onto their hand. You just let it walk on over. And there it is. Wow. Then you let them look at it. You keep track of them. Make sure they're not going to throw it or anything. Yeah. Isn't that cool?
It is.
Yeah. Well, how does it feel?
You can feel a little bit of weight to it too. I mean, you can. It has some mass. I mean,
Yeah.
believe it or not, he's well fed, I guess. That's really yeah. Look at that.
Yeah, that's actually a female. Yeah. So the reason she's so hefty is because she's a female, so she's going to weigh a lot more because she needs to store a lot more fat for her babies.
Now she's not doing the lead thing. Right?
She's not, because I think she's a little tired. She might also be waiting to molt, but sometimes what they do is they will, these guys have a really cool habit where if you put a stick or your finger in front of them, they'll actually go up and like dance and try to catch it. She's not really doing that. Not in the performance
But
mood.
you can really feel, you should try this, you can really feel her hooks on your skin.
Yeah, but it's not hurting, right?
Not yet.
Okay, there we go. So that's basically how you're going to transfer any arthropod or insect. You know, make sure you keep an eye, pay real close attention to the person. The arthropod's probably going to be fine. You'll see, I'll probably drop a cockroach. It happens. So does anybody else want to hold this lady? All right, come on up, come on
That was
up.
really great. That was really neat.
So what I'm going to do, she's really good and y'all are really into it, so I'm going to let you guys pass her around because I trust you guys. Here, this is what she's, can y'all see? She's actually, everybody say hey. All right. Yeah. Okay, so this is where things get a little rowdy. It's okay. These guys are also entry level. We've got a beetle here, and it's called a blue death fainting beetle. That's because, and this guy's going to be really unimpressive because they're really used to being held. But when they feel scared, they actually pretend to die. So they play possum. You know, like hog noses, things like that. It's just a little beetle, and these are related to they're called the darkling beetle. So if you guys have ever seen mealworms, they're related to mealworms. So their larvae is very similar. So who wants to hold this guy?
Mine's away.
You can feel a little bit that's kind of grab on. Yeah, you guys will get to hold everything you want to.
I'm just trying to hold the leaf wedge. My cat.
So with that one, I'm going to let you all pass it around too.
And then like,
Alright, so we got the cockroaches here. They gave me all females, and the females don't usually.
This is cute. It looks like
Males, they look like they are real.
yeah, I'll hold that one. Not
Do you want to hold this? You can feel what I mean about the me too. A little bit sharper.
okay,
Here we go.
so
We hear the hissing. This one's got a bad attitude.
Did you darken your hair? Is your hair always? I guess it's a shirt.
The
Your shirt color.
cockroaches can be a little bit faster, so just try to walk your hands from one to another.
Let me get back up here.
Yeah, they do. It's creepy. They won't hurt you, but it's creepy. I just did it. Okay, so feel free. All the cockroaches. I'm gonna leave. All good. No, they're not.
Alright,
I told you. I told you.
Picture over the table.
So they're different. They're kind of like species of all cicadas emerge in life cycles. So cicadas not every year. Then there are 3-year cicadas.
I don't do the history talk.
They are always prime numbers, and we think that's because they just fit the right number.
You won't hold the history
When they emerge, they
I've done it before, I just don't.
but the big ones are more gradual.
Especially that one, the
They come out
cherish,
every
that's
year.
what
So they'll find a reason for
And you said, give me anything.
I honestly think
Oh, yeah, sure, I bet.
what a day.
They're doing their
I
thing.
think they're the 17-year cicadas with the red eyes and the yellow wings.
How you
We have those in
doing?
the mountains.
What's your name?
These are called ultra-stain. We also have what I call
I
hybrid.
always like that.
Cicadas, they're very, very small. They have symbols on them. And that's I think every 3 to 5 months.
You okay with
Did you name her after the dog?
just want to make sure you weren't totally put out back here, okay?
Because as you get further south, you get less diversity.
Kind of looks like I took that picture and I'm holding.
that's good.
We might not have been.
No. Do you want to hold Jessica?
Yeah, they are a little bit
I'll
fast.
hold this one.
What?
I just need Drex.
I have some scissors.
That was one is slower one.
That would be
And the other two that are good.
I saved both of them.
love the chocolate.
Anybody want to hold this one? Yes.
I'm not even touching it.
Exactly. Especially dating them. Some people disagree with this, but kind of agree with that. Makes them a lot more open to it, like a little dusty. It's cute. You know? Yeah.
I wonder if when the leaves turn brown,
I can't
also
either.
turn brown.
Alright, I'll babysit your
No, but this is actually a photo.
Yeah,
The big jump like you'll find them in Peruvian. I don't know what they eat. Everybody asks me what they eat, and I have no idea. I don't know that anybody knows. Those are fuzzy bugs. They first appeared in the U.S. They came in on a plane in Martinsville Jackson Airport in 2008. And one of my entomology colleagues actually discovered it. One of the first species. And all of these guys stem from a single mother. So one came in, one place.
She's not.
She jumps off. She's right there.
I'll take it.
So they are.
Should I? Yeah.
They are invasive species. They are called kudzu bugs because they eat kudzu, but kudzu's closest relative is soybeans. So that's why your major crop. That is an imperial.
She knows I'm apprehensive.
Yeah, they're very cool. They're really cool. Anybody else want to? They're not helping. They're not really making any kind of difference. Unfortunately, they cannot. They haven't really proven to be as bad as because our winters have kind of been able to control them. They haven't been able to cross the Appalachians, which is really
Everybody get a chance to hold if you wanted to.
I'm gone.
I tried really hard. And they have 42 different colors.
Do you want me to use Spiracles or just?
Yeah, they're
That's great.
How do I get to
Is
it?
it just me, or was Molly really pissed at some of our opinions on Ben's side topic yesterday?
I don't know. I thought it was fine. Like what about the doctors?
Yeah.
What do you think he was mad about?
Well, then at like the very end, he was just like,
Definitely
he's
so.
like, well, is this technically exploitation? And like the entire back half of the class was, and he's like, well, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. And I'm like,
Oh, I don't know. Maybe I blanked out during that part. I don't know. I thought it was funny that he kept trying to like intervene, and then Ben was like, "I'm about to talk with them. I'm about to talk with them."
a lot of my really cool.
We don't know how to get to it.
Intervene, Jessica.
A lot of the
I dropped the paper. Well, she was like calling, so when I tilted my head, she went.
as grassroots.
Oh,
She would go to we would go to Tarantulas Island, really not developed island dogs, really good and we would just spend the weekend collecting in October because their seasons are extended.
Okay, I got a lot, so. Of course I will. Of course. Absolutely.
I'm totally in the background.
Wow, okay. Really
put it more true.
Yeah, you're definitely in the background of like all of them.
oh my gosh.
You kind of look like Christmas today.
And then we'll try to do some questions as we wrap up today, unless the heads out. That's okay.
There are several different ways we can collect these. Obviously,
Me
a lot of butterflies and moths. Yeah, it's actually really fun. So you'll see the bug nurse around campus with like nets tucked in the backpacks and everything.
When he.
For my taxonomy
Oh, so I'm not the only
I
one
had
that
to
dropped
make the
anything?
collection.
Yeah, he did too.
This big.
Okay, good. Thank God. I think it's been dropped a lot.
It was pretty
She said that's where her exoskeleton comes in.
but yeah, a lot of these are native to Georgia. A lot of these I just kind of find. I like to only collect things that I know there are a ton of, or that you know.
What we'll do, gang, let's get
I don't,
ready
like,
with a
I'm
couple
not gonna
questions
really
for
kill
Miss
it.
Melissa. I've got a question or two for her here in a second as we wrap up today. This is so cool. I'm so proud of y'all for
yes.
trying this. This is great.
She's very
content.
Yeah, so she might do her little, yeah. So when she does that, you can actually, yeah, you can get her a leaf, and she's like, ooh, leaves, yeah.
I just washed my hair. Can you do it, Lori?
You can also do their